All right. I am ecstatic to have back to the show Alan, who is now one third of the Retrotopia podcast. How are you, my good friend?
Oh, I am absolutely fantastic, Cape. And if you think you're ecstatic, well, how do you think I feel being on here with the Unbuckled Cape on the very same podcast as people like Jim Shooter and what have you? I mean, this is an honor.
Now, I'm not gonna I'm not gonna stop our recording to say that, but you said that, and like the hairs on my arm stood up a little bit. Like it's wild that like I don't even I still don't comprehend that like I've done those things. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like
yeah, you're
every
absolutely
now and then
killing it.
I have like all the comics behind me that have signatures on them. And, like I walk in and look at them, I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I had, but no, I yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I actually think it was either you or Brian, one of your cohorts for Retrotopia, were my first like online interview. I think it was you.
I seem to remember that they happened around about the same time. I mean, it's been a minute since we spoke on here. Um, I definitely remember Brian's name, and this was long before Retrotopia was a thing. You definitely mentioned whether it was just before, it was happening just after. I can't remember, but
I think he and I recorded after, but the episodes came out back to back. I
yeah,
definitely remember that you two came out back to back because that was like one of the better weeks view
uh,
wise for the or download wise for the podcast. Our
yep.
our Spider-Man the animated series episode, regardless of being like what a little over 2 hours, I think it was like 2 hours and a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
There for a long time was one of my most downloaded episodes, or
Ah,
at least
that's
top five.
that's nice to hear. I appreciate that, and
And
it just goes to show me and Brian have pretty much been attached at the hip, even since then.
yeah, and you guys are doing a well, I guess um you came on a little bit later. Was it always part of the plan for you to be part of that Retrotopia gang with Brian and
No,
Sam?
no, it just sort of I literally just fell into it. Um, just started with much like yourself with a guest spot, and I think they just liked having me around. So I clung on like a bad smell.
Well, they wanted that caramel smooth voice for the intros, and you know,
It just
you
snowballed from
you
there.
kind of like video games, so I
I
guess a retro podcast is good for you.
I dabble.
Yeah, dabble. Um, so speaking of things that you kind of like, you are a what, like maybe a lukewarm fan of Coheed and Cambria?
Oh, I may have heard a track or two in my time. Seen a few gigs, met the band a few times, collected all the comics, collected all the albums, gotten all the special editions. You could say I'm a fringe sort of fan.
When you say met the band a few times, what is a few times?
Ooh, three, maybe four. I know for a fact that Coheed and Cambria, their signatures do take up the first page of our wedding guest book because we took it with us when we met them one time and had them all sign the first page. This was before we got married, me and my wife. Um, but yeah, officially the first people to sign our wedding book.
Now wait a minute. You got guys that weren't at your wedding to sign your wedding book?
Absolutely, they're responsible for us for the whole ordeal.
Now I've heard this story before, but maybe you want to regale the audience with what you mean by that?
Well, I mean, it just so happened that I went to a Coheed and Cambria gig with a good friend of mine, and there were others in the crowd. He knew them. We all got together, and unbeknownst to me, my future wife was there in this group, and we hit it off. And it's now what 12 years later,
Wow.
and we have a kid. We love Coheed and Cambria, always have done, and whenever we can, we get out to see them live. Been a bit tricky in the last couple of years, what with our daughter, but yeah, big part of our personal history.
You didn't like name your daughter Josephine or Maria, did you?
No, no, under the circumstances, and we won't
Okay.
get there just yet, but I don't think that would have worked.
Oh, what did you get me into, man?
I got you into the meta, no, not even a meta story, but the concept story behind the albums that Coheed and Cambria make. So, for those who don't know, obviously Coheed and Cambria are a progressive rock group who have a very epic science fiction theme to their lyrics, which also reflect sort of real life happenings. But yeah, not well. A few years after the albums were made, they started to put out the comics of the story behind the lyrics, and that's what we're here to discuss today.
So when they wrote these songs, because I kind of wanted to talk about the music for just a little bit before we get actually into the comic. When they
You got it.
wrote specifically the second stage turbine blade, which is what we're going to be talking about today. That's the title of their first album, correct?
Correct.
When they wrote it, did they write it with this entire story in mind, or was this kind of like the Zelda timeline where it was pieced together later? Which, by the way, you had Zelda decor at your wedding as well, so had to make sure we threw that in there.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely comics and games and music. Yeah. I wear my interests very much on my sleeve. Um, the concept of the Amory Wars, which is the overarching story of all of the albums, sort of came about when Claudio Sanchez took his first trip from America into Europe, France, I believe. And it was his first time sort of out in the world on his own. So what he did was he began sketching a story about his experiences, but in such a way that it wasn't overtly obvious that it was about himself. So created fictional characters and a very wild science fiction story to also reflect the changes that he was going through. At least at the time, I mean, the second stage Turbine Blade was written not too far from the album with regards to time. I mean, some of the albums we're like, I think we're getting comics coming out now that were for one of the albums. I think back in 2008. So the further we go, the further we get away from the albums. But I think at least initially the lyrics for the album were a very loose framework for the story, which then going back and actually writing the comics, it allowed them to flesh out some of the themes a bit more. Which is why, if you are listening to the album, you can pick up some of the themes that you might recognize from the comic, but it's not a sort of one for one translation, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah, and that was I attempted to listen to some of the second stage turbine blade on my way home from work today, before Bub interrupted with shouts of "Old McDonald, Old McDonald," and that is how I would have described it. There is like certain lyrics that when you hear it, you go, "Oh, okay." This is that part of the comic, and this is that part of the comic, and the way that the tracks are laid out in the album kind
Hmm.
of do run along with the happenings in the comic. But
Yeah,
um, the first song in it is Time Consumer.
that's right.
Well, I guess the first one is the musical
Well, yeah,
interlude, but the first legitimate track is Time Consumer, and like specifically, there is a line, two sentences, four words, um, that is pulled directly from that song and put in the comic.
that's right. And you see that a few times as you go through the comics. I think the problem with a concept like this is if you just word for word put comic into song form, you're really limiting your listener base. So the story is there for people who want to find out more about what's behind the songs, but the songs have to be enjoyed independently from the comic. So by keeping
Oh.
that a bit vaguer, the songs are still enjoyable, even if you don't necessarily know, what is going on.
Well, sure, that makes sense because I could sit down and listen to a song from Apollo. Is it Apollo God Burning or God?
Good Apollo 1. No, hang on. Good Apollo, I'm Burning Star 4, From Fear Through the Eyes of Madness.
Cheese and Rice.
I think I've got the album behind me somewhere. I'm not going to get up and have a look, but I think that's pretty close to it. See, even I like forget sometimes.
The and I think maybe that, well, let's put a pin in this first because we got to talk about the creators on this. And first is the artist Gus Vasquez. Has worked on other things like Scooby Doo Apocalypse, Suicide Squad, The Flash, and Deadpool. And then there was Gabriel Guzman, uh, Cable, Avatar, Frontiers of Pandora, which is actually very recent, as well as Predator and StarCraft Survivors. And then, excuse me, my book, I got the hardcover. Yeah, it's just a hardcover. I thought maybe it was the deluxe edition, but this has some bonus stuff in it, and actually the first um, two or three issues that were released under. Trying to flip open the book because I know I didn't make a note about it. Boom Studios is who produces their comics right now, but it was released under someone else. His first couple of books, and then they switched over to Boom to do the big run. But the artists that worked on that was Mike Miller and J.D. Smith, and then we kind of hinted at it, but I guess it hasn't really been said. Claudio Sanchez is the writer of this, and did you know, Alan, that this is not the only comic books that he's written?
I did know that. If I remember correctly, there's a few that he's done. Translucid, Kill Audio. I want to say just recently now. I haven't gotten into them yet, but My Brother's Blood Machine, Prize Fighter Inferno, has a comic series as well, I think.
I also have written down Keys of Z, Pop Gun, and the Bag on the Line Adventures.
Now, the Bag Online Adventures were actually was actually the original name for this series. So
Um,
when the first few issues came out, it was called Bag Online Adventures because Bag Online was a shop that was, I think, across the road from Claudio's hotel in France, I believe, and he just ripped the name from that.
Now, I'm in North America,
Hmm.
United States of America to be specific. You were across the pond a little bit closer to France. Um, what the world is up with France that would make him draw and have a story like this? Like, is there like weird aliens running around there that we don't know about? Or
Well, if there
I just
are,
cannot picture how he got to got to the point that he got to with this book.
I mean, a lot of it is making sense of his own sort of family life. I do believe that, for instance, his father did have struggles with drug addiction and what have you, which, if you follow especially this story through to its conclusion, you can sort of see the parallels of how one person's drug addiction can negatively affect an entire family. And I think that's taken to the extreme here. And it's just things like that that have been sort of cast through the sort of prism of this sort of sci-fi story, just to change it just enough so that it's happening to somebody else, but while still being a very personal tale.
Um, it- so I guess we'll just jump into the comic because I have thoughts, I have questions, um, all of which I'm sure you will be able to respond and answer to. In issue number one, uh, main characters Coheed and Cambria, which is the name of the band, um, and Coheed's brother, who is Inferno or the Prize Fighter, goes by a couple of different names.
That's right.
We find out very quickly that they are actually beings that were built for war and not humans. They're more machine, or
That,
they're
yeah,
some kind of sentient being.
that's correct. Yeah, they you obviously I can't. I don't think it's referenced in this story, but they are iRobots, which is a sort of organic machine designed initially to, and we'll explain what this means, protect Heaven's Fence, at least initially.
Right. And Coheed is approached by its general, right? He's General
Oh,
Def
yeah, Mayo Deftinwolf.
Mayo, that's what it is. Mayo Defton Wolf.
Yeah.
And Defton Wolf convinces Coheed that, the reason he has these nightmares is because there's like some virus inside of him, and the virus has affected the children, and the children have now the capacity to destroy all of Heaven's Fence. And I guess we could touch on it now. Heaven's Fence is basically their solar system almost. It's was it 33 planets that are kind of connected together by like one power source or
So it's 78 worlds that are all connected by energy called keywork, which is powered by the stars of. Now, this is a point of contention for me because Claudio refers to it as the stars of Cyrus, named after
yeah.
the person who discovered them. It's spelt Sirius. I don't care. It's spelt Sirius, so it's the stars of Sirius. So
Okay, when I was reading it I said Sirius.
yeah,
So,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
yeah.
It's referenced in the Afterman albums that the character is called Cyrus, and that's just never sat right with me. But anyway, yes. So
Is that
70.
one of the things you brought up to him when you met him?
I didn't, but I wish I did now. Maybe next time.
Yeah. Um it ends with Mayo Denton Wolf convincing Coheed that he has to murder his own children, and when he gets home his wife just like immediately agrees with him.
Hmm. Yeah,
And that's the end of the first issue.
yeah, that's right.
And the note that I have at the end of the first issue, and I try very hard not to use any kind of profanity on my show, but it was just a blatant question for you that I'm going to break that rule for me. Alan, what the hell am I reading?
So Coheed rather, is plagued by dreams which are more like memories of something he doesn't really remember happening, which are, of course, from a previous life where he was part of, and this is explained in later issues, of course. Actually, let's save that for now. Regardless, neither he nor Cambria know what to make of these dreams, know what to make of the strange things that are happening around them. And when Mayo Deftinwolf explains that Claudio was created and implanted with a virus which could potentially cool the stars of Sirius and thus cause the heavens fence to break up, and that can be controlled, but the mutated form of the virus that has passed to their children can't be controlled. He's convinced to kill off his family and then themselves. And it took me a long time to sort of work out why that happened in the story. And the best I've been able to come up with, and this isn't expressly explained, I don't think, but Coheed and Cambria were literally built to protect the key work. Whether they remember that programming or not, if there is a credible threat against Heaven's Fence, then they are programmed to do whatever is possible to stop that from happening. Now, that's not how the story explains it, but that's how I choose to sort of not justify Coheed's actions, but it's how it makes sense to me, if you see what I mean.
You putting it that way, like as I'm sitting here, I have that expression of like an epiphany on my face of like, oh, that's why it's so easy to convince him.
The story, admittedly, doesn't do a great job of explaining that.
Well, and to be honest, I mean, I know we'll talk about it as we go, but like the first 5 issues, they're kind of tough to really figure out what's going on.
Yeah. This is obviously still very early in the concept and very early for even Claudio Sanchez writing comics. So, if I have one criticism, is that I think this story at this first 10 issue run could have been served by being an extra 5 issues long,
Yeah,
just to allow more time at the beginning to let the story breathe, let us know these characters and understand the justifications for some of the horrible things that happen. And I think it would have a greater impact if it wasn't not rushed so much, but it does have to get to a point fairly quickly.
right. The story feels really compacted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, and issue number 2 is where we get the first, at least that I know, the first sign of, or the first time they pull lyrics from a song and put in, and that is when Claudio is giving poison to his young twins, which is horrible to read and look at. And the line is Maria, my star, Matthew, good night, and that's from Time,
Consumer.
um, Time Consumer, right?
Yeah,
And I really like that song.
it's a great song.
I don't know if I like it anymore.
It's certainly gotten a lot harder to read that part of the story. Having and I know you feel the same way. Being fathers ourselves, because I remember I've been reading this story for years, and it's obviously only just recently that that really hits home,
Well,
and it's
and maybe that's why time hasn't been spent on the family as much, because there isn't a connection. Like we have no idea who these kids are, other
true.
than it's his kids. So that kind of brings up another question I had. The line in the song and in the book is Maria, my star,
Yep,
Matthew, good night.
yep.
Here's my question. If I were to say, Alan, you are my star, that makes you feel very good. That is quite a compliment. It's
Hmm.
uplifting, it's this and that. If I
Yep.
say Alan, good night, I might as well be saying, say hello to my little friend, right? Like, did he not like Matthew? What's wrong with Matthew?
I mean, we don't know. We don't know. We haven't had enough time with Matthew. For all we know, he could have been a problem child. I think it's just more lyrical punch more than
Oh,
anything.
that's totally my my defense mechanism of using humor to get through a tough
Oh,
read.
absolutely, absolutely. I know. I completely understand. I completely understand. It just fits. You know what it is, Cape? It fit the song better.
Yeah. But so after they offed 3 of their 4 children,
Yep.
which the second one was, I believe, the middle child, because it doesn't really say, at least that I don't remember. It doesn't. It's Mia and Matthew, the twins, and they're young, and then it's Josephine and Claudio. I guess Josephine's older.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the oldest one, she has a really bad run in
With the
with some,
Jersey City Devils. Yeah.
and some unspeakable things happen to her there, and then she comes home looking for comfort from her family, and well, Yeah.
Yep.
So, and Kohi determines that the poison was too horrible and goes for a more direct approach with her.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. You hit the nail right on the head with the
Boy,
proverbial
that was a
hammer.
bad pun, man. I don't know if that was intentional or not.
I mean, listen, I wish I was that clever. Uh, yes, so Coheed, uh, I mean, there's no beating around the bush. He smashes his daughter's head in with a hammer, and it's an act of mercy, I say, through gritted teeth, because he doesn't want her to suffer as much as the twins did. But, I mean, let's make no mistakes here. This is not a decision that you're supposed to be cheering for.
Right.
I mean, because at this point in the story, we know that Coheed and Cambria are being manipulated by Mayo Deftin. It's hard enough to say. Mayo Deftinwolf, working for the Supreme Tri-Mage Wilhelm Ryan.
Right. And I guess I kind of skipped over all of that because in the early goings, I wasn't sure who was what. I mean, they make it very obvious that early on that Ryan Willem is evil.
Oh yeah, yeah. He's
But,
he's your emperor, if you like, Star
right.
Wars.
Um, and then they have is it pronounced prize?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so they have the prize, and they're kind of like guardian angels to the keywork.
Yeah, yeah,
So
absolutely.
they're two sides of the coin,
That's right.
and Wilhelm's just after power, basically.
Yeah, effectively, he's one of the mage. So their 12 mage were selected to watch over Heaven's Fence, each given a sector to look after. And through devious means and Machiavellian machinations, our Wilhelm Ryan here has basically beat out all of the other mages to rule it all. And not satisfied with ruling Heaven's Fence, of course, he just wants more power.
Not only does he gain power over the other mages, he turns them into horrific creatures as well.
Yeah, that's right. The Constantine priests.
And he sends one of them after Claudio, who is the lone surviving child of Coheed and Cambria. And this creature actually hunts down Josephine's fiance,
Yeah,
uh,
that's
who
right.
witnessed the murder of his fiance, and he is like on a run, and then this alien's chasing him. Well, I guess first it actually stumbles upon Claudio, who then escapes it because he has powers.
That's right. Yeah, he discovers the ability to become intangible and invisible, and slips away from the priest, which is just
I'm-
awesome.
and look, I at the end of issue 2, I was but before I even picked up this book, I was a little bit concerned. Um, I wasn't sure if I was going to like it. I wasn't sure if I was even going to understand what was going on. Issue number 2, at the end of it, I'm like, okay, they murdered their family. This alien's after Claudio because he's going to have some kind of significance. But outside of that, I still did not understand the prize or Ryan Willem or like any of it. I wasn't even sure what the difference at that point, what the difference was between the Keyworks and Heaven's Fence. Like a lot of it is very, very vague early on.
Yeah, which is fair, because there's an awful lot of world building that goes on very, very quickly. And there are a lot of new concepts that, again, because, like I said, where this story could have been expanded a bit further. I mean, you are drip fed more about this world, but it is daunting at first. I'll grant you that.
It does get better though. In issue number three is where we learn that Claudio has these powers. He's able to escape the creature, um, and it ends up turning on Patrick, who is Josephine's fiance, and hunts him. We catch up with Coheed and Cambria, who awaken after being captured by Mayo. They awaken in like this kind of like a cryogenic chamber, but they're semi awake and they're pretty sure that they can get out. And then we are introduced to Inferno, which is the eye of the KBI, which Coheed and Cambria and Inferno in their prior life they were the KBI, protectors of Heaven's Fence. Knowledge, Beast, and Inferno. I think right.
That's
Knowledge is the
correct.
first one. So,
Yep.
and I think issue 3 is where it started to turn for me, where I went, okay, I can get on board with this. This is kind of like a revenge comic, right? This is going to be all about Coheed and Cambria going on a revenge tour for what they were forced to do to their family. Um, issue
uh,
issue number 4 comes along and I'm immediately squashed with that idea because at the end of issue 4 I think Coheed and Cambria are dead. The rebellion against Ryan Wilhelm that Inferno is assisting leading, I guess he's not the leader of, but he's assisting to lead, that seems like it's destroyed and Claudio is on the run with little hope, and I'm like, well, this is just depressing.
so nobody wins in the second stage Turbine Blade, and this really is obviously the setup for a very, very long arc. In order, I mean, it's like in Star Wars, in order to have A New Hope, you have to have Revenge of the Sith. So everyone has to lose, except, of course, for Wilhelm Ryan. Um, I mean, by the end of sort of issue 5, I think you're referring to the flash forward with Inferno, yeah?
That's at the end of issue 5, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously, we haven't seen what happens to Coheed and Cambria yet. We haven't seen how the rebellion ends, although by that point, it's not looking good for them.
And
So
I have the book in my lap.
yeah,
um Issue number 5 is also when one of the prize gets almost like demoted.
yes.
And
So
she is sent to be Claudio's protector.
that's
So
right. So
there is major, major concern over Claudio, where he's going and what he's doing and why he isn't dead yet. If you are Ryan Wilhelm.
yes, absolutely. Because as is sort of mentioned a few times, building up, there is a prophecy that the son of the three will be sort of the only thing that can stand in Wilhelm Ryan's way. Obviously, the three being the knowledge, the beast, and the inferno, which is why, of course, his opening gambit was to have Coed and Cambria kill their family so that this was no longer a problem. Of course, didn't work out as planned.
Well, I'm not really sure they were given enough time. I mean, they kind of only gave him a couple hours. You think if they would have gave him more time, maybe it would have been accomplished. I think Wilhelm was just a little bit too impatient.
Well, I mean, that's always the folly of a sort of evil emperor, isn't it? Just
Yeah.
delegation, delegation, delegation. But yeah, so I mean, we've got Coheed and Cambria, as you said, being transported to Paris Earth in the Gloria Valvassa, the rebellion on Dilariath, and what's Jesse doing at this point? He's trying to stop Coheed and Cambria from getting to their destination.
Jesse. Which one's Jesse?
Uh, Inferno.
Have they called? Oh, that's right. Because okay, yeah, um, that's who Coheed refers to him as.
Hmm.
Okay, yeah. What's the what is his love interest name? I can't remember her name.
Oh, Mariah.
Mariah.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, poor Mariah.
And I think, yeah, poor Mariah. I think the story, poor Mariah, poor Patrick, poor Maria, Matthew, Josephine. I mean, it's a bit of a downer to start on, I'll admit.
Well, and I think that kind of works in this book's favor. I know I'm kind of jumping to the end, and maybe we'll come back to it, but just in case I forget, because I did not write this down. When I got to the end of this, I closed it, thought of where I'm going to rank it. I'll keep that hidden for now.
Yep,
And
yep.
then I kind of did the whole, you son of a gun, I'm in.
Nice,
Because
nice.
it's so bad. I need it to turn around. It's almost, I'm actually going to equate it to the exact same way that The Walking Dead made me feel. And what made me hang on watching The Walking Dead for so long was it can't get any worse than this.
Yeah,
That train wreck that you can't look away from.
yeah, yeah. It's just like when your main characters have had to go through so much strife. Like it's an underdog story taken to the absolute extreme, and you want to see how this is all going to turn around, because by the end of this story, and again we're jumping ahead, but by the end of this story, things are not in a good place.
Oh, no. So, issue number 6, Coheed and Cambria are alive and must face Crom, who kind of reminds me of the Imperial Guards from Star Wars, his look a little
Yeah,
bit.
yeah.
But uh, he's a bad dude.
Oh yes, yes, very very powerful. So our man Mayo has been demoted for his failures thus far, and Admiral Viola Crom has been sent to basically rein in Coheed and Cambria, who by now have fully come into their powers. So,
Which is awesome.
which is awesome. So Coheed has the arm blades, almost like a Wolverine, as it were. Massive blades that come out of his arm, his left arm, I think, and out of his right arm, he discovers that is all completely machine and can at will transform into a massive arm cannon. And of
Yeah,
course, Cambria, being the knowledge, it's all psychokinesis, uh, psychic powers, and I wonder, Cape, if you noticed the cover of issue 4 of the second stage Turbine Blade, and I'm wondering if you've noticed that looks familiar, because it's just a little nod, but I found it very interesting because I don't know if you can see it.
I have it open to what they're showing me the cover is.
So you've got basically Coheed and Cambria in full battle mode, arms
Nope,
outstretched.
that is not. Let me flip to the back. That might be in the covers gallery at the back of this trade. Okay, now I see the one that you were talking about.
Right. And have you noticed that that's the exact same cover from I can't remember what issue it is, but the Dark Phoenix saga from the X-Men, where you've got Cyclops and Jean Grey doing the exact same pose.
I honestly don't know if I would have picked up on that.
It's something, obviously, because where I'm reading through everything, that
Right, yeah.
I saw this X-Men cover and I was like, hang on. And I went back and checked, and yeah, it's again, I don't know what issue of the Dark Phoenix saga it is, but it's definitely there. And I just thought that was a lovely little nod. Little
It is issue number. Oh, this isn't showing me an issue, but their stance is almost identical. Yeah.
right. I mean,
I mean,
that's intentional as far as I'm concerned.
the main difference between the two is Cyclops' beams are shooting from his eyes,
Of
whereas
course.
Coheed's is coming from his hand. And there's a slight difference in positioning of Cambria's arm and leg compared to the Dark Phoenix. Her arm and leg are actually behind. Dark Phoenix's arm and leg is behind Scott Summers. In this one, she's
Yeah.
more in front. But that is a great catch. I mean, that is, and there's like some for cosmic stuff coming over behind Cyclops and Jean Grey, and in this one you see Cambria's telekinesis powers kind of coming from behind her in extremely similar fashion. One of them has a lot more blood in it than the other one, but you know,
Yeah, true enough. True enough.
no, that's really cool. I it would have never because I actually haven't read the Dark Phoenix saga. It's on my list to get on for the show, probably at like a milestone episode somewhere.
Right,
So
right. Yeah.
I haven't even touched it. So yeah, that's pretty cool.
A nice little Easter egg.
Yeah. So where were we? Issue 6. We Inferno is actually also trying to kill the Knowledge and the Beast, Coheed and Cambria, to prevent them from getting captured by Ryan Willem.
Yep.
Mariah does escape. She is one of the few survivors from the Resistance. Claudio is heading to, wherever he is heading.
Hmm.
It's wherever this place is that they use other beings to power Ryan's like basically mass destruction weapon. I mean, it's
Yeah, so basically, Claudio has hitched on a garbage skiff, basically, just to go anywhere but there, and finds himself on Camp Cyrevity, I think, and the native peoples there are basically enslaved and fed into an engine that just adds their energy to the keywork. Because what the keywork actually is, and a big part of what annoys both Mariah and Inferno, is that the keywork is actually the souls of the dead.
I don't know if I picked up on that. I knew that they were using souls to power his weapon, but I didn't know if I realized that that's how the keywork actually functioned.
Yeah, it's again, it's another thing that's explained more fully in later arcs, but you come to find that it's sort of an afterlife.
Huh. Well, regardless, the other the prize that was sent to protect Claudio ends up in his, well, in his family's home, and meets his girlfriend and kind of defends her from the rogue mage. Well, I guess he's not really rogue, but the altered mage. For whatever reason, issue number 6 is where this book started to click for me,
Right, right.
because
Okay.
we're kind of done with all of this, the inciting incidences. We're
Hmm.
done with all this tragedy. Now I'm back on the okay, so this is going to be a little bit more of a revenge story for Coheed and Cambria. Mariah lived, she's gonna rebuild a resistance. Like, it started to turn back in my brain that, like, okay, now this is going to make sense. And then issue 7, it got even better. Like, issue number 7, I was totally on board at that point. Coheed and Cambria, this is where we actually get the explanation that they were part of the KBI, Knowledge, Beast, and Inferno. They were an anti-terrorist group who was set up to be terminated. Really, the person that created them, and they don't tell you who created them, they just hint at it. The
Hmm.
person that created them actually needed to get rid of them because they were going to turn on him, because he was, from what I was able to infer, I assume Ryan Willem was the creator, but I don't know, and don't tell me, I don't want to know.
Okay. Okay.
But uh whoever created them actually created them to destroy the keyword. and um, Coheed and Cambria were made into sleepers, given memories that they didn't actually have, given a family, kind of just put into a little corner of the system and forgot about. While they were being made into those sleepers, Inferno escaped and he joined the Resistance.
Right. Yeah.
Um, this issue number 7 is pretty much the most straightforward of all of the books so far.
Right.
Uh, you know, and then issue number 7 is also, which you had mentioned, that's where you find out about the prophecy, and you learn that Claudio is actually the only one that can stop Ryan.
Exactly. Yeah. So Claudio is potentially a being called the Crowing, which may or may not be the sort of herald of God's judgment on heaven's fence. And obviously what that means for Wilhelm Ryan, a being who already owns the fence but has ideals of godhood himself, that's obviously a problem.
Yeah. Yeah. So and not a lot really happens with Claudio in that issue. He just kind of is living in this I mean, basically it's a kind of like a concentration camp.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
And he's just hiding. Um issue number 8, we're introduced to these flies, which are more like dragonflies.
That's right.
Um, and this is what now Mayo is put in charge of. But
Yep,
these flies, again, something that wasn't explained very well, have something in their bite or sting that will turn Coheed and Cambria into what their weaponization forms are, which are is the Monstar,
that's right.
which, by the way, I wanted to look it up and never did. When was this written?
Oh, that's a very, very good question.
Well, the
I
album was out in 2001, correct?
correct. I might have to look that up because I don't have that information to hand.
That is what Spotify told me earlier today.
Oh yeah, I mean the album was absolutely, but when the
So he chose. I got the. I looked it up as I was talking, so I got the information I needed.
yep, go
He
for it.
chose to name Coheed's weaponized form Monstar
Yep.
after Space Jam came out.
Listen, there isn't a man, woman, or well, maybe not child. There's not a man or woman alive as old as we are who hasn't in some way been influenced by Space Jam. That film is cinematic greatness.
I know, and that's where when the first time I read Monstar in this, I went, "Really, dude? You couldn't all these crazy names you come up with, and you decide to go with Monstar just 5 years after Space Jam released?
I mean, it's still cool.
I can't take it serious."
I mean, he looks like a beast.
Yeah, yeah, and I guess I'll save that for the end, or I can bring it up now. I guess Well, we'll save it. We'll save it.
Okay.
So he turns into this. I don't even really know how to explain it.
Well, basically, the flies, while not only wreaking havoc on Paris Earth to the native population, uh, when injecting Claudio, trigger the virus that's around his heart that was put in when he was created, and it triggers the transformation into the monster. And at the same time, the when Claudio, I don't know why I keep saying Claudio. When Coheed and Cambria lock eyes, that triggers Cambria's transformation into the White Ruineer. So the Monstar is designed to basically cool one of the stars of Sirius and thus break up part of Heaven's fence. And she is the what's the word I'm looking for? The backup plan, the fail safe to stop it when it's done enough.
Okay, so I opened up the book so that I could get another look at them to get a good description. He looks like Doomsday with a beard and an arm cannon.
That is actually the best damn comparison I've ever heard.
It that is 100% what I
I
see.
mean, I don't know DC, but even I know what Doomsday looks like, and that is pretty spot on.
She looks just as cool.
Oh yeah,
She
especially
kind of looks like a souped up Power Ranger with an awesome sword.
yeah, she's basically completely armor coated with a yeah massive sword, as you say.
Um, so I'm just glancing over my notes. I lost my place.
That's all right. So while the so while obviously this transformation has taken place, Coheed does what he's programmed to do and flies off into space directly at the heart of this star. Meanwhile, the Flies are wreaking havoc. The Red Army are on Paris Earth. The Prize are there trying to restore order and stop Wilhelm Ryan's schemes. And it's there's a lot going on.
yeah, all out war. You have now is it Annabelle Lee?
Oh, Ambelina.
Annabellina, is that how it is? I shortened it on my notes thinking, oh, I'll remember what it is.
So Ambelina is the Prize who's been assigned to watch over Claudio.
She still can't find him, but
Oh,
she is fending off one of the mages that have been mutated. Um, that actually might be in issue 9, but issue 8 and 9 kind of like run together so fast. There's really
yeah,
no
it's
set
all
stops to the
out war.
story.
You've got the priests are all on the field. The Prize are there, and obviously you've got the population of Paris Earth just completely caught in the crossfire. It's a massacre.
Now, oh yes, yes. Uh, Crom kind of bites the dust,
Yep, that's right. Yep. Well,
and
when Kohi transforms, he's suddenly grossly outmatched.
one of the most satisfying villain deaths that I've probably read in comics. And there's not a huge attachment for these characters for me at this point. But when Crom shows up and he basically very simply just brushes aside Coheed and Cambria, and then Coheed transform and he just crushes him.
Right. Yep.
That was so
Immensely,
satisfying.
immensely satisfying.
um, but it doesn't end satisfying. As you said, Coheed kind of completes the mission that the Monstar is programmed to do, and um, Cambria does the same. Where as soon as one of the moons or whatever the big planet is that holds everything together is doused, she kills Coheed, and then as her transformation goes back before her mind is taken control of again, she turns her sword onto herself.
That's right. Yep.
And then um trying to think. Oh, Maria. Not Maria.
Mariah. Yep.
Mariah. Uh Mariah doesn't make it.
Nope. Mayo Deftin Wolf sees to that.
And it looks like Inferno might die. He ends up not dying, but he kind of goes into hiding, I guess.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he gives as good as he gets, but it's it's a losing battle for everyone.
And then Claudio ends up literally living in the sewers to hide from his pursuers.
That's correct. Yep. And most notably, as well, is the fate of the prize. The beings that are there to sort of guide God's judgment when the star of Sirius is extinguished, Heaven's fence starts to break apart, and all the prize can do is basically sacrifice themselves to hold everything together.
Not all of them, though, right?
No, no, not all of them, but they
Okay,
are.
I was gonna say because at the end, Inferno is going into a boxing match against one of them.
That's right. The prize fighter fighting prize.
Ha! I didn't pick up on that.
There you go. But yeah, so they are greatly, greatly diminished at this point. So now, not only have Coed and Cambria been taken off of the board, the prize are greatly diminished, and if not for Claudio Kilgannon, there's not much standing in Wilhelm Ryan's way at this point.
So I like Coheed and Cambria's music. So part of my interest in this was that.
Yeah.
Another part of my interest in this was very early on in the days of Unbuckled Comics. Longtime member of our community, Pickle, had said he requested a review of this comic with you as the guest. So I am
Good
feeling
old
a
Pickle.
promise that I made doing this.
Pickle, if you're listening, and I know you are, I love you, buddy.
So like, I almost didn't want to bring him up because I didn't want to have to wait for you to get a napkin and wipe the drool off your chin and
I just let that flow. It's fine.
yeah, gross. Um, but I wanted to know how it all worked. How do you go from music to writing a comic? And that may have not have been really answered for me because I still don't. I listen to some of the songs, and other than a word or two, I still don't really see how they mesh together. I do, however, think it is incredible
Wow.
that this story is in someone's head and they found two different ways to get it out.
It really is. Yeah. I mean, where does any story come from? I mean, it's a culmination of life experiences that you put through a different lens. And especially for fiction, I mean, anyone who's writing a story is going to put parts of themselves in the story. Now, obviously, growing up, Claudio Sanchez was very musical. So telling this story through music just made the most sense. But then as people discover the band and for myself, as soon as I discovered this band, I was like, oh, this music is fantastic. And then as soon as I heard that there was lore, there was a story behind everything I was hearing, I was ravenous. I had to know what this was all about. And it gets to a point as a creator, you just think, well, if people are asking for this, let's flesh this out. Let's turn this into another medium so people can enjoy it. And I think that's probably the thought process behind finally laying this story out in comics. And they're still making them today. In fact,
Right? Are they on the final volume now? I mean,
God
they're
help
there.
me, they are. And I have been waiting, as you know, we've spoken about this many, many years to see how this story ends. I mean, this is not the only arc in the Amory Wars, because the Amory Wars, Claudio, all of that basically covers what, five or so albums, and then you have a couple of prequels, and then you have an ongoing story that we have the albums coming out at the moment, which we think are set. Well, actually, no, we know now that they are set far after this whole arc is finished. So basically, we have how it began, we have how most of it went. We don't know how Claudio Kilgannon's story ends, but we know what the universe looks like several years after. And it's just that bit that I'm waiting to get filled in, and I can't wait.
Have you read any of them yet, or are you waiting until you have all of them
Oh,
and then reading them?
no, I've had to read them as I get them because I couldn't have them sitting there. And I mean, I dabbled with the idea of waiting for the trade, but I need it. I need it.
See, I like to get the single issues, but I wait till I have like the complete set and then
You
I read.
have far greater willpower than me, my friend.
No, no, it's the opposite. I don't have willpower because I literally cannot wait that month until the next issue comes out.
Uh,
It's the lack thereof that forces me to do that.
fair enough.
I will drive myself insane. When Dark Knights of Steel came out, I read the first issue of it and I sat it down and I told myself I will not read another issue until I have the first volume
Yeah,
or what the first volume. And then started reading more of them and I think I got to like issue 3 and I sat down. I'm like, nope, got to wait for all of it.
because if you get into it, you're not going to want to stop until the story is done.
Oh, I won't sleep.
Which
Yeah.
which begs the question then, unbuckled cape, is this a story that you can see yourself delving further into?
Well, I want to make mention of the hardcover book that I have. First of all, um, it is maybe one of the prettiest hardcovers that I own. It is right up there with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles: Last Ronin as far as appeal, quality of the book, the artwork as a whole. Which artwork when it came out in the single issues as well. The
Mm-hmm.
artwork to this is fantastic. I have absolutely no complaints. There wasn't any point where I'm looking at it going, okay, what are they trying to show me here?
Mm-hmm.
It's very direct. It's bright, which is a little bit contrary to what we typically get with stories that are this dark. A lot of times you get the dark colors, but the Red Army, they're not like a dark maroon. They are a bright red.
Yeah, yeah. This
Um,
it definitely pops.
the mage, the first one, that when he is chasing after Ryan, he turns into like this blue dragon type thing, and the blue is you know the kind of blue that you would find on a globe. It's just a bright pure blue. There's tons of bright yellows, and I have it in my hand. I'm flipping through it. The aliens that are at the concentration camp, they are a bright green. Pop is the right word to use. Everything just pops in this book, and I think aesthetically, um, it's very tough to find something that's as aesthetically pleasing as this on my shelf. Now, this book also has a tribute, which I thought was really nice. A little single issue dedicated to Patrick.
Ah, yep, yep. Poor
Um,
Patrick.
but I thought that single issue was really cool. And there's a little excerpt in the beginning where it's Claudio Sanchez, not the character Claudio, talking about the character that Patrick was kind of an afterthought. Like he was a character added in, but then there's a little bit of repercussion of people like, oh, well, he's a wimp and he's this and he's that. And Claudio felt really bad that people were calling this guy out, a character that he created, and saying that he was, gutless and this and that. And so he decided to give Patrick his own single issue to show that that's not what he was. In fact, he was quite brave in dealing with everything that he had to deal with. I thought that that was really cool. It's the first time I've seen that. Like, I'm sure it's happened in comics before, but this is the first time I'm experiencing a writer coming to the aid of one of his characters in
Yeah.
such a way that he creates a full single issue. And then it also has the first two issues that were, yes, first two issues of the second stage Turbine Blade, when it was under the name The Bag Line Adventures, produced by Evil Inc. The art on those I am not fond of. They're similar, but it's just not. I don't know. It's a lot darker. There's not as much depth to the art in those.
Yep.
I did not read through that one. I read through the first one and knew what was coming in issue number 2, and I said, "Not yet." Um, but as a whole, if you are looking for something to put on your shelf that is appealing, my word, is this hardcover gorgeous.
It is a beauty. Yeah, I can't argue that. And as somebody who has the Last Ronin upstairs, thanks in part to you, actually. Uh, I can agree. Yeah, there's a similar level of appeal. I mean, I'm not saying that the stories are comparable. Let's not
No,
go.
no,
Let's
no.
let's not go there. But
Yeah,
it is a good looking hardback,
yeah. A lot of effort went into
and
this.
it's jam packed.
Actually, let me look. Flip it over here. $40 for this hardcover. Absolutely worth it. I mean, if this was a like a DC or a Marvel marketed hardcover, I guarantee you'd be paying at least 50, maybe 55 for something with this kind of quality and all the extra stuff in the back of it. Like this book is worth every penny. Now, is the story worth every penny? To circle back to what you were asking. For me, I plan on reading the next one.
Well,
Um,
good
eh,
stuff.
and if I plan on reading the next one, I'm probably going to have to read the one after that.
Oh, absolutely. Now, the second stage turbine blade is a good start to the story. There is, at least in my mind, now I love this story, but there is a noticeable improvement in the pacing, in the character work, in the world building as a whole. Uh, so I was, and I'm not taking anything away from this book, but there are times when it is, it's a fantastic first effort. There are a lot of allegories to things like Star Wars, to other sci-fi works, and you can sort of see the influences as the story goes on. It almost influences itself and separates itself from the pack. I mean, because what Claudio Sanchez has done here is created perhaps one of the most interesting and unique settings for a science fiction fantasy story that I myself have ever seen. I mean, Heaven's Fence, the keywork, all of that. I've never seen that. It's incredibly interesting, and I just think the story just gets better and better as we. And if he sticks the landing, of course, then well, we've got an all timer.
I I have no doubt that the pacing improves.
Yeah.
Like I said, I read that first issue. Excuse me, I read that first issue when it was the Bag Online Adventure. That first issue to what the first issue was on this trade, the difference is night and day.
Hmm.
The improvement was a lot, and you could tell that those first 5 issues were written with maybe a I don't know if more is going to happen. You can definitely tell that those second 5 issues, it was more of a commitment of yes, I'm going to tell this story the way I want to tell it.
That's an
Um,
excellent assessment. And perhaps that's why the first maybe 5 issues do feel rushed, because perhaps he had to get to the meat of the story there to justify telling it.
well, right. I mean, you want people to come back for the next 10, and if you do all this world building with characters Coheed and Cambria and their 4 children, and you don't have major events
Mm,
and tragedies, how am I going to pick up this book and care about them or care about what's going to happen next immediately? We're not reading a book about Wonder Woman or the Flash or
es-
Hawkeye or Thor.
established characters that you already know.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to hook your audience much quicker when it's unknown characters, and that's really the big the big hurdle for a lot of new writers and artists is how do you stand out?
Yeah. That's, yeah, incredibly astute.
I think for Claudio, maybe a little bit easier because he had his music. And like you, people that followed the music then will jump into the lore. Maybe not all of them, but at least some of
No,
them.
but you've certainly got an inbuilt install base, almost as it were, of people that you can translate over to another medium. Absolutely, couldn't agree more. I mean, yeah, as you say, that's how he got me.
Right. So the next step is how do I make this something other than a cult classic, if you will.
Yeah,
Um I think this first book is a good step. I'm not convinced that I'm going to love the story the rest of the way through. Um, if I'm being totally honest, I don't love this book, but it did enough to keep me interested.
right.
Um,
Yep.
I can't believe that Coheed and Cambria are dead. And again, don't give me any hints.
Nope.
Like in my mind, they have to come back to life somehow. But maybe not. Maybe it's all going to be revolved around Inferno and Claudio from here on out. Maria, yeah, I keep wanting to say Maria. Mariah definitely is not coming back.
No, I
She's
can't
done for.
see. I mean, no spoilers, of course, but that's fairly definitive.
Yeah, but
But bear in mind, like, not that I would ever spoil anything for you, but even I don't know how this story ends. So there are still surprises in line for me as well. So
yeah, I guess
you could
I'm
ask these questions about what happens to characters down the line, and it's just like, well, I don't know yet.
yeah, I guess that
Anyone could come back. It's comics.
yeah. Some are more easily explained than others.
True, true.
You know, again, but uh man, I and to be honest, as much as my feelings bounce back and forth between man, this I- and I guess it's not bouncing back and forth. I guess I have a hard time of knowing where I stand because I see the potential for this book,
Yeah,
and what's to come. It is so close to being something great, but it just isn't there in this. It's just missing a thing or two. I had to work a little bit too hard to understand the lore early on. It's a slight miss for me giving this a higher rating.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But again, you can see the improvement from the first five to the last five, and there is no reason that I think that there is nothing that makes me believe that that's going to taper off. That quality is going to taper off with how those last five issues ended. I do think that there's only going to be improvement with that. So
Can confirm.
yeah, I mean, I'm going to read the next one when that will be. I'm not going to run out and buy it tomorrow or anything like that, but it is
Oh
definitely
no.
now. It will be on my shelf, and the book itself, even if you are looking at the binding of the book, stands out because it has the Boom Studios in real big letters, Boom with the white exclamation point. Like it's like I said, it's an eye catcher. So it's gonna definitely every time I look at my shelf, I'm gonna be reminded that it's there and I need to continue. But
Well,
it,
if you ever get
I,
round to In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3, hit me up.
which makes no sense. Why isn't it Silent Earth 2? It's the second part of the story.
It's
And Second Turbine Blade is the first part of the story. What
these names really bother you, don't they?
they do. They do.
Well, if it helps, I think the second stage turbine blade is actually a machine part that Claudio Sanchez's father worked on in the factory that he worked in.
Okay, well that helps a little bit.
Hey, there you go. I'll
Um
give you the rest when we get there.
okay. I want to ask you how you feel about it, but I feel like that's pretty much a given, right? I mean, this is let's do it like this. For you personally,
Yeah.
not for you recommending for anyone else. For you personally, where does it fall on your unbuckled comics list?
Well, I mean, asking for me personally, I mean, obviously I have a huge bias because I'm such a fan of everything related to this band. And I think if you are a fan of the band like me, then it has to be a. I'm going to flip flop between. No, if you're a die-hard fan of the band, then obviously it's a What Are You Doing? I mean, if you want to know more about the framing story behind all of the albums, the artwork on the albums, some of those strange lyrics that you can hear on the albums that maybe don't make much sense out of context, then it's a What Are You Doing? Now, is this book for everyone? No, obviously not. I would say if you know nothing about Coheed and Cambria, no, if you've never heard a track, like you say, it's still a great, gorgeous looking book. I'd say pick it up, flick through it, see if it's something that piques your interest, and if it gets its hooks into you, that's when everything else is going to be a what are you doing?
I think that pretty much mirrors my thoughts as well. I have this book in a firm pick it up in the sense of literally put this book in your hands and flip through it before you know if you want to read it.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
I mean, there are some dark themes. There. It's not always a comfortable read, but I think even this book can catch you, even if you're not a Coheed and Cambria fan. There is a good enough
yeah, I
story
think
here
so.
that's so unique and so interesting. It's like when you see that splash page of Heaven's Fence, like you're like, whoa, what is that? I have to know about this.
I'm actually flipping. There's one of the oh, what is the ship that Inferno has?
The Grail Arbor.
There's one of the Grail Arbor that it's going through space, and like that page sticks in my mind of like, whoa, okay,
Oh yeah, is it the one where he's chasing
yes,
the Velvassa? Yeah, yeah, I
yes,
know the one you mean. Really
like
dynamic.
yeah, and like I've said, I took about 5 minutes to say it. It's a gorgeous book and stuff sticks out. Me personally, I'm not huge on science fiction stuff,
Hmm. Hmm.
so that's where I was worried that the themes were gonna bug me, that I wouldn't be able to get on board with what was going on plot wise. That ended up not being the thing. I'm just not really into space travel and all these different planets linked together. Like that
Sure.
stuff just doesn't catch my interest. But the plot actually is what has my interest with this book.
There you go.
Like I need to know what happened. So for everyone else out there, I think it is definitely a solid pick it up.
Yeah,
Um,
I can get on board with
so
that.
I am pleased that you are saying you can get on board with it because I definitely had some high blood pressure moments of like, my God, I'm reading this man's favorite comic, and I'm going to sit here and say,
No, I
look
mean,
it up.
what it comes down to is, I mean, I can look at this from my own point of view, but I can also look at it objectively. And, just because I love something this much doesn't mean it's for everyone. But pick it up and see if maybe it's for you.
Well, my friend, as always, really appreciate getting to sit down and talk with you.
Oh, it's been a
Um,
blast.
I appreciate you staying up so late for us.
Anything for you, Cape.
um, Anything that you want to throw a plug in before we get out of here?
Well, I mean, the obvious one has to be Retrotopia, our retro video game podcast. Me, Brian, and Sam every week uh, just sit down together and talk about some old video games and have a lot of fun doing it. So, we'd love to have you come and check us out and pick us up, see if we're for you.
Oh, you guys are definitely a get on it, and if they're a retro video game fan, it's a what are you doing?
Oh,
Um,
thank you. I appreciate
your
that.
guys' Patreon is free, and I actually think your stuff shines when you guys do the quick plays. I cannot get enough of the quick plays.
Oh, thank
And
you.
now you have a Patreon with a paid tier where when you subscribe to the paid tier of the Patreon, you get to pick a retro video game for you guys to do, and you get to pick the host that does it because those are
That's
those are
right.
single host episodes.
That's right. So they're, let's say they average about 20 minutes a piece, and we just pick a very quick game. You know, it doesn't have much to sort of discuss as a three piece, and just spend about 20 minutes or so just discussing them. And of course, yeah, as you said, you can pick a game, you can pick a host, so you can either reward or punish us as you see fit, and see what we think of the game.
I've been waiting for some things to roll over to join Patreon, and I'm probably going to do that this weekend.
Oh, nice,
I
nice.
have been consistently in thought of, do I go with a game that is an unbuckled comics type game? Have one of you play my beloved Adventures of Batman and Robin for the Sega Genesis,
Aha.
or do I do kind of what I want to do, and that is really punish somebody with the I think it's the New Adventures of Pac-Man 2. I
Oh,
think that's the one.
I
Um,
Sam loves Pac-Man. He'll yeah, I'm sure he'll enjoy that one.
I
So
was
sorry,
I
buddy.
I had asked which one of the viewers most likely to rage quit, and he was quickly to answer him. And that is a game that I when I was younger, I know that I was like, this is horrible, and I would rage quit and go back to it. But those are video games. That's for you guys.
Sure, sure.
Retrotopia podcast. Everywhere you get your podcasts. Patreon is actually the best place for those guys, as everything is in one nice feed for you right there.
Yep.
Uh, Alan, thank you so much again.
Cape, always a pleasure, my friend. And listen, genuinely, I've been hearing what you've been doing recently. Obviously, I listen to every episode and all the stuff with the Hershey's Comic Con, all of these big names that you're rubbing shoulders with. It's just so nice to see you're killing it out there, and I'm genuinely proud to see you doing so well. So keep up the good work.
That means a lot, man. Um, until next week, guys, get out there and save the world, you bunch of heroes.